A breath of fresh air. It's Sunday Sanctuary with Petra Bagust.
Breaks my soul in pride. My mind is moving slow. Far from all I know. Give me time to know. My mind is moving slow.
Tēnā koe, welcome to Sunday Sanctuary. E te honga matawai, nau mai, haere mai, whakatau mai rā, ki tēnei puna wairuatanga. Arā ko Sunday Sanctuary. E numia he oranga mō tō wairua, a ia koe e puta i tēnei puna. Kia mākona o karea roto, nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. The idea of this podcast called Sunday Sanctuary is a space where all of you is welcome, where you can take a moment or some minutes to rest at a wellspring for your soul, for your spirit, your wairua, that you would go away from here feeling less thirsty, maybe more replete, more replenished, refreshed. So, welcome, welcome. You are so welcome. I love the theme that we're digging into today, the miracle of the mundane, because just let's be honest for a moment, miracles are pretty exciting, and the exciting is exciting. It's enticing, alluring, the next big thing, the next adventure, the next milestone, the next dream, the next hope. And to be honest, this is personal. Sunday Sanctuary was a radio show for 6 weeks. There was a lot of energy for that. We would wake at 5 a.m. and go into the station and collect ourselves and broadcast out. And now Sunday Sanctuary is here and it's finding a new home. And yeah, it may have lost its space on broadcast radio on a Sunday morning, but Sunday Sanctuary still feels like the right name. Sunday morning is a vibe. Like, there are songs written about it. And Sunday morning is sometimes a space of rest, a place of peace. And hey, why don't we make the mundane a vibe? What about that? What about the okayness of here we go again? Because let's be kind of, real. Our lives are sometimes hidden in plain sight, in our ordinary moments, in the moments of everyday wow, in ordinary beauty, a leaf, a soft cheek in a beloved face, holding hands peacefully, throwing away dead flowers, because once they were alive, in the folding of washing. And that's going to come up today because there's a regularity and a routine. The sun comes up, the sun goes down. And the sunsets and the sunrises, they can be drama and joy and glory. But sometimes the sun just travels slowly, imperceptibly sometimes, just across the sky, hidden by clouds, covered by rain, and yet it all is good.
Awe, wonder, surprise, incredulity, admiration, marvel at the world we live in. It's Sunday Sanctuary with Petra Bagust.
Have you ever heard of a tree before? Pretty ordinary. I mean, amazing. But, regular. There are lots of trees. Do you know how many lots of trees there are? There are 12 times more trees on Earth than stars in the Milky Way. Ah! What? Scientists estimate that there are between 200 and 400 billion stars in our galaxy, while there are an estimated 1 trillion trees on Earth. And I am like, yes. So like the stars, trees live a long time and are truly important for life. We know this. And the thought that there are more trees on Earth than stars in the Milky Way just hope rises up inside my chest. I'm just like, we can do this. Let's plant trees. Let's outweigh the stars. Let's embrace the oxygen that happens on Earth. It's so ordinary, so life-giving. There we go. There's our metaphor. Oxygen is ordinary and life-giving. It is a miracle. So let's go into examine together. let's take a moment to think back over our week, because Sunday is one of those spaces virtually or in actuality that can provide space for reflection. And I think this time for our examen, I would love you to breathe in deeply wherever you are. Surrender to the oxygen that you need for life. Ha ki roto. Ha ki waho. Breathe out. And maybe this time you breathe in and retain the breath. Be present to your own lungs, breathing in life-giving oxygen. Yes. Yes. And I invite you to quote a yoga teacher, breathe a lot of love in. And breathe a lot of love out. And as you think about your week, and maybe think about some of the things that prickle you, that you notice that were maybe difficult, challenging, that didn't go as planned, can you surrender them like a breath out? And as you consider something that went well, that ended in a way that makes you relax and say, I did it. It can be done. And creating space for breathing, the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide, of breathing in and breathing out, embracing and letting go, allows us to say yes to all of it. Yes to the areas where I need to receive compassion, mercy, grace. Yes to the areas where I release fear, pain, sorrow. Oh, I could do that for longer. I do invite you to, as you progress through your day, at some point, maybe before you go to bed tonight, create a space for yourself where you do review what worked and what wasn't so easy in your day. And just say yes to it all. Hold it, embrace it, because it's in the knowing and the noticing that we can sometimes find space to increase freedom, increase peace. And those are useful energies. Continue with us for more of the Miracle of the Mundane. We're going to talk to my dear friend Frank Ritchie soon, and also one of my favourite bits, light a candle.
Sunday Sanctuary, a reset for your soul.
For anybody who's listened to Sunday Sanctuary before, you'll know that it is a practice of mine to light a candle, and that it is relatively recent. Can I just say that I am sticking with this practice? This has become a ritual way of being, and I was absolutely delighted to be given a candle for my birthday, because I'm going through these puppies. And so I'm going to light a candle now, and it is literally a symbolic gesture where in my physical personhood, I now acknowledge when I light a candle that I am present. And whether you want to join me, whether you want to, listen to this podcast regularly and have a candle beside you and to light it, or whether you take this away and do it sometime, I just encourage you to find spaces where things that are ordinary, like lighting a candle, like cleaning your teeth, like putting your shoes away, can have a kind of beauty that is surprising and delighting, entirely free, and is created. We create the beauty. So I'm going to take my lighter. I see the flame. I'll light the candle. Enjoy the visual, the audio, the sensation of the heat of the glass in my fingers, the aroma of melting wax. And I put it down. And there it is. A ritual of light. Rev Frank Ritchie, it's good to korero with you. I'm happy because I get to do this sometimes when we're in the office together, but today we're in the studio together.
Yeah, it's exciting.
I know. It doesn't grow old, does it?
No, it doesn't. I always love having a microphone in front of me.
There's nothing mundane about it. But today on Sunday Sanctuary, we are talking about the miracle of the mundane. So this idea that perhaps, cheeky, hidden in plain sight, your actual life is happening in the mundane, ordinary, daily things that you do. That your life isn't hidden inside of your birthday, which I've just had, which is like one day a year. I'm so glad my life isn't hidden inside my birthday. So I loved my birthday. But yeah, it was like this one day. It's not enough, you know?
Was it spectacular?
It was spectacular in so much as I had eggs cooked for me and my children let me play, boggle and win.
Okay,
And
so your ordinary mundane life then doesn't involve your children making eggs for you and doesn't involve them letting you win games.
It certainly doesn't. They were thrashing me all week and then I'm like, wow, I'm winning. It took me the third round before I realised they were playing by different rules. They were giving themselves restrictions that allowed me to win.
And now you're back to not having eggs cooked for you and back to not winning games?
Yeah.
So you're back to the ordinary.
I'm back to the ordinary.
How does that feel?
It's great.
Good.
It's good. Yeah. I like contrasts. So I don't have to be winning all the time. I don't mind my children being better than me at games.
Yeah. It's partly, I would imagine, it's partly because then if that was your ordinary life, then having the eggs cooked for you and winning the games wouldn't feel so spectacular when you get to your birthday.
So true. So true. It was a special occasion. So this idea, now that we've diverted to my birthday, this idea of the mundane being where life happens, how do you relate to that idea?
Yeah, for me, it's probably part of the church calendar as a minister that has really brought this to life for me. So in the church calendar, we have big chunks of the year.
This is the traditional
church calendar. And many people would be familiar with Christmas and Easter as part of that calendar. But there are so many other things in there. In the lead up to Christmas, we have what we call Advent. The lead up to Easter, we have what we call Lent. And then there are other days smattered throughout. And those are the real high points, particularly Easter, where we tell the story of Jesus. And then Easter lasts for 50 days.
Afterwards.
What's
that called?
It's called Easter. It's the season of Easter, which actually begins on the Sunday of what the weekend that we normally call Easter. Easter begins on that Sunday and goes for 50 days. And that's a period of celebration. So we have these massive high points in the year. And then we have this big long time in what in New Zealand is our winter called ordinary time. And so for a big chunk of the year in the liturgical, traditional Christian calendar, we're working out what it means to live our faith in a very ordinary lives.
But do you think the fact that it's got a title, Ordinary Time, makes it just a little bit more special immediately?
Yes, it does. Which is
because it's like not a mistake. It's not a mistake that this time is ordinary.
And it comes with a colour because every part of the liturgical year has a colour, and the colour of ordinary time is green, which works in the northern hemisphere because they're in spring and summer. For us, it's largely winter, but that colour green reminds us that there's life to be found here. So having to philosophically work out how I tell a church about that and how every year I take a church on the journey of ordinary time has made me think about what ordinariness, the part that it plays in my life. And I am someone who repeats time and time again that I believe God, who I believe in, is at work everywhere all the time. And that it's my job to be tuned into what it is that God is up to. And if God is at work everywhere all the time, then God is at work in the ordinariness and the mundaneness of my life.
Everywhere, all the time.
everywhere all the time.
So in unloading the dishwasher, in vacuuming the floor, in picking up the clothes and hanging out the washing, in
Frustrating conversations with other people.
traffic and on the way to work.
Sitting in the traffic and getting on the train when I'm taking the train and walking to the local shop and talking to the person at Countdown if I'm choosing to talk to a human as I go through the checkout rather than using the machine. It's in the ordinariness of that moment and every eye contact that I make with people when I'm walking down the street, all of that.
So
God
you're
is
stressed out
present.
constantly trying to find God everywhere. Like you're like, whoa, I have to find God here, I have to find God here. I have to look at this checkout counter person the right way.
No, not at all. If anything, there might be a lens that I've put on that is trying to look for those things. So I'm not just meandering along in life without taking notice, and I'm not just experiencing the highs of life. I want to experience the lows of life as well.
And the mids.
Yeah, and the mids. And the stuff that just happens, that doesn't have to be amazing. But I want to be someone who knows that truth, beauty and goodness are present in all of it.
So when I hear you say lens in that context, I hear you say that you have chosen to pay attention to everyday action that allows it to show up as, oh gosh, cool.
Yes.
Yeah, look at this. Oh yeah, I smiled at that person, or they smiled at me, or we exchanged something. Or I heard of a Jewish woman who became, I think, a Buddhist monk who talked about folding the washing sweetly. And that so struck me that it could be like an act of contemplation or prayer or peace to fold the washing with an intention towards sweetly, doing it sweetly. Because the reason it resonated with me is because I would fold the washing with, well, bloody washing, and why do I have to put it away? Why about the children? And there's only going to be more tomorrow. So all I did was just change my orientation towards the washing. Like actually fold it, and I mean, you can choose, can't you?
Yes, you can.
To smell the cleanness, or to be grateful that it's clean. Like I am literally walking around my house now going, do you know that I have a machine that does my washing? It washes my clothes for me. And people just keep looking at me blank-faced, and I'm like, you don't realise I've got a machine that does that. Because I keep thinking about my forebears. They didn't have a machine. They washed it all themselves. It took time and energy. And I have a machine that does it for me.
Yeah, I'm like that with the dishes. I get aggravated at washing the dishes, but it is my job, and I have not relinquished that job because I have to keep coming back to it. So I've written a prayer that I pray when I feel myself coming to the dishes and I feel that agitation automatically rising. I have a prayer that I pray that causes me to slow down and rethink what it is that I'm doing. It's an act of service. It's an act of cleanliness. There's an element of my soul that I can reflect on here as well as I clean these dishes. And then my whole experience of doing the dishes is different because I've decided to try and find something beautiful in the ordinary.
You're taking those dishes from dirty and you're making them clean.
Yeah, and doing it for my family and for myself, but for my family.
Isn't that incredible, though, that actually externally nothing has changed? You're still the one who has to do all the dishes, but your internal orientation towards the dishes or the ordinary or the mundane can adapt and change, transform, I would say, potentially.
Yeah, which in my world, as I would imagine is similar to yours, is really important because a lot of my world is drama. It's big things. It's talking to lots of people. It's being involved in really big issues. Because I'm a chaplain to people who work in our media, I'm involved in some way in some of our nation's biggest stories. So it's really easy to come to the dishes and let my ego take over and go, why am I doing this? Don't they know how important I am? This is beneath me. And so then having to engage in the ordinary is really healthy. And to remember that life is here and that God is here in some way as well.
That's I like that. I like that. It's almost like a wero, a challenge, not to make the dishes magical and wondrous and make them a high, but to make the dishes a grounding experience that you can stand on your own 2 feet and be like, I engage with my life. I choose to engage with the ordinary things because everybody has to eat and has to poop and has to get dressed and has to, they have to work.
Yeah.
at some stage or care for other people. And actually those things, when they're allowed to be wonderful and ordinary and joyful and regular, they take on a different tone.
Yeah, and can be wonderfully healing.
Oh, yeah.
I had, just recently, I had a Sunday off. And a Sunday
that's
off in
big
my
for you.
world
That's big for you.
is big. So there was no church in the morning. There was no radio show in the evening.
Okay.
And so my Sundays are usually really busy. So my wife and I walked to our local farmers market. They had a Cornish pasty and a croissant and a coffee. Nothing spectacular. And then made a Sunday roast, which was wonderful. And then in the evening, our daughter came home. We watched a movie together and we hung out. And it was just a wonderful day. But there was nothing amazingly spectacular going on. The very ordinary things that I was getting to do were healing. They were replenishing my soul. Or I have another example. I went to a monastery and spent a week at a monastery towards the end of last year when I was feeling extremely tired. I was worn out. Now that sounds spectacular, going to a monastery. It sounds deeply spiritual. But what was rejuvenating about it was creating an ordinary rhythm in the middle of it. So the meals are at very regimented times. The food is very regimented. The prayer times were very regimented. But it was that ordinariness and that rhythm that was the thing that was healing as I disconnected from the big stuff of my life. It was diving into the ordinary that was healing in a world that often wants us to live at a really dramatic level. We have to be fighting these big issues all of the time.
Or achieving high highs.
Yes.
Like we have to be making it or getting there or breaking through or have a story. You know, this happened, that happened, you won't believe, all of that. So there's this sense of what's new. People will greet you with that, won't they? What's new?
Yeah.
What's happening? Have you got any stories, any goss?
What are you going to achieve this year? Is
Yeah.
expecting
So what are you
that
up
you're
to?
going to say something big. So the last few years, I always get asked at the beginning of the year, because people have seen me create stuff, what are you going to achieve this year? What's the big thing you've got on your horizon? And my answer for the last few years has been, nothing. I'm just going to keep doing these things and hope that I do them well. I read something recently about the power of the wandering mind and how our mind needs to wander in order to create, in order to problem solve, in order to file things and create memory. Our mind needs to wander. If we're always in the dramatic, that can't happen. But when I was creating the roast or just walking up the road, wandering with my wife, quite physically wandering, my mind was able to wander. We need those times where we get to come down from the high. The only way that happens is if there's just ordinary, mundane stuff playing out.
So it's kind of wonderful that the ordinary invites us into that place of space, if we are willing to give it to ourselves. It's almost like, for me, it would be a permission or a intention setting where I allow, and I have changed. I used to stand in front of the dishwasher and be like, I am too important, essentially. Like, will I unload it now or should I be doing something important? And I would be wasting time trying to decide, would I unload the dishwasher or not? And I literally was stuck in my own head and stuck in my own, I don't know, maybe it was my own ego, rather than being like, and now I choose to do this. So for me, as a person who lives in a house with lots of other people, it's very easy to get caught in the trap of, why don't they do this, or why hasn't this person seen this, or why is it always left to me? And I like the idea of coming home to, today I choose to leave those dishes for my youngest to do when he comes out, and I can live with the discomfort of those dishes being there, or today I choose to do that, and I offer this, not because I'll get any thanks, but because I choose. And then just doing them. I don't know, there's something, freedom. Like you were saying, I like that idea of there being healing inside the ordinary.
Yeah, and it's because it's human. We're often, I think, given a lens on the world and other people's lives because of things like social media and entertainment that is not true of other people's lives. We're showing their spectacular. And so then we think our ordinary doesn't measure up. But most people's lives are ordinary and mundane. We get up, brush our teeth, we have a shower, we have a coffee, whatever your routine is, we're all doing it. Having to poop, as you mentioned earlier, which always feels great. We just got to, everybody lives in that space. Everybody lives in that space, no matter what their role in life. So it is a deeply human thing to live an ordinary life.
Yeah. awesome. And I, as an enthusiast, am like, wow, this really redeems the whole of it for me, because I'll be like, what have you achieved? I'll ask myself questions. What are you achieving? What are you doing? How are you spending your time? Have you done enough? And to embrace enoughness, for me personally, is quite miraculous. And it's an embracing that I'm loving coming home to. So here's to ordinary time.
Yes.
And in honour of ordinary time, which is a religious tradition, I have to say I don't know what your experience of church has been, if any. Like, it might have been a great experience of a warm and selfless community, or it might have been a terrible, stressful experience that has been traumatising, or it might have been no experience at all. You might have never been to church, so neither good nor bad. But whatever our experience, the word in the Bible that is sometimes used when referring to church is ecclesia. And ecclesia simply means assembly or gathering. And so, as you and I gather here in this moment, as we come together, this is like a form of church or ecclesia. And the elements that make up Sunday Sanctuary are a reflection, a loose interpretation of a traditional ecclesia gathering. An essential component to that traditional ecclesia gathering over hundreds of years is the sharing of a meal, a symbolic meal, which we call communion. Now, communion literally means the sharing or exchanging of intimate thoughts and feelings, especially on a mental or spiritual level. And in light of today's theme, the miracle of the mundane, it strikes me that despite its deep, rich meaning, the tradition of sharing communion is ridiculously ordinary. When Jesus considered how he should be remembered by his followers, like he could have come up with an elaborate ritual or extravagant requirements or something really special. Instead, he took the very ordinary elements of an everyday meal and made them extraordinary. The super simple act of sharing bread, sometimes with strangers, sometimes with people you don't agree with or people who are very different from us. This coming together, which has taken place over thousands of years in every country in the world, by every culture we can imagine, it all takes place around the simplest of meals. So you may or may not be a Christian or a believer in God or a higher power or the divine, but hang in here with me for a moment more. An absolutely beautiful quote by Rachel Held Evans said, "This is what God's whānau is like. A bunch of outcasts and oddballs gathered at a table, not because they are rich or worthy or good, but because they are hungry, because they said yes, and because there's always room for more." That's pretty powerful. Bread, wine, you could say boring, everyday-ish, and profound. Thanks for sharing communion with me.
Sunday Sanctuary, your mug of goodness.
You're listening to Sunday Sanctuary, and we are talking about the miracle of the mundane. Why? Well, because alliteration is a good thing, and also because, so often there is just deliciousness waiting for us to notice it. So I love the idea of things being hidden in plain sight. And I was complaining the other day about taking supplements because I'm in perimenopause and it makes me feel better to take some supplements. And they said, could you turn it into a ritual? Could you turn it into something that is pleasing to do? It's like finding the joy inside of the job. And I went to our internet community and said, what's something mundane that brings you joy? And I got so many delicious and lovely replies like ironing, what? And doing the dishes. But then they added this: smelling lovely lemony scented bubbles, enjoying the splash of the hot water. So go you, Alison. Nick said listening to raindrops on the roof. And that's like so yes. For Fiona, it was cleaning a mirror. How about that? You know, when you wipe away all the toothpaste splatters and you're like, I can see. For Nick, it's cleaning out the fridge. I do know the joy of a clean fridge. Or getting into clean sheets. Yes, Lynn. Paying bills. Now, I have to say that I just paused after reading that. Check this out. Paying bills I had a period of unemployment and I am so thankful I have enough money to live on. So thanks, Gillian. For Charlotte, it's cleaning windows. I like that job once it's finished. Hanging out the washing. There is joy in that. I mean, imagine finding joy in hanging out the washing. You've got to do it all the time. These are good ideas. Organising shelves. Kelly, I'm with you. Weeding the garden. Dusting my well-curated gallery wall. Thanks, Hikatia. Jigsaws. You're on your own with that one, but I see it. People walking their dogs past my living room windows every morning, the daily parade. That is a joy for Anna. What about watering my plants? Tea and toast. Definitely yes, Aria, yes. Making my bed. Oh, isn't that a good feeling when your bed is made? I agree with you, Lizzie. Getting stains out of my toddler's clothes. Leah, the memories. Getting into PJs when I get home from work at like 6 p.m. I hear you, Fiona. Watching leaves change colour with the seasons. That's for Bronwyn. Seeing native New Zealand birds. Pi waka waka, kotare, kereru. Yes, Jess. And checking the letterbox. Lydia, I am with you. The hope that spring's eternal. That something delightful will be in there. And wiping down the bench and stovetop after I've finished washing the dishes. I have to say, for me personally, a clean and clear bench where the dishes aren't washed and left drying, but they are washed and dried and put away is joy. Mainly because then my husband's happy. But also now it's become my own joy. So I'm trying to turn taking supplements into a joy and a kitchen done for a day a joy. And, oh yeah, I think there's lots of joy to be found in the everyday and the ordinary. Thanks so much for all your replies. Please keep following at Sunday Sanctuary NZ on Instagram, and we can be found, I guess, in other places as well. This is the part of Sunday Sanctuary where I introduce the beautiful, the wonderful, the talented Grace.
Kia ora. Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure and never a chore, and where we increase our emotional vocabulary. And I like the idea of gathering and understanding, tending to and embracing more emotions rather than less. Tell us, what are we looking at today?
Today, as we're talking about Miracle of the Mundane, we are going to look at contentment. So the definition that Brene Brown has in The Atlas of the Heart of contentment is the feeling of completeness, appreciation, and enoughness that we
Whoa, hang on a second. Just say those three again, because I think I need to take notes.
Okay, so we've got completeness, appreciation, and enoughness. So we experience the feeling of those three things when our needs are satisfied. So the feeling of completeness, appreciation, and enoughness that we experience when our needs are satisfied.
I have to confess, the other word that really jumps out of that sentence for me is needs. This idea that we could feel complete or appreciation or enoughness when our needs are met, because we so often live behaving as if we have no needs, as if needs are bad, as if they need to be pushed away from us. That makes us needy or somehow flawed or empty or not good enough when we have needs.
Yeah, so it kind of creates this interesting sort of contrast and tension, because on one hand, the feeling of contentment is when our needs are satisfied. But on the other hand, we can feel contentment without going out and chasing after all of these things and getting more, bigger, better. So I find that quite an interesting thing to balance, that it is about getting our needs met, but maybe it's about sort of reframing that and realizing that sometimes we have exactly what we need, and we are the world tells us that we're always needing more and we're always needing bigger and better. But really, sometimes we have what we need, and it's about becoming aware of that and taking that time to stop and appreciate and realize that we do have enough.
Even you saying this it's quite an interesting thing, because I'm like, I want more emotions, I want more understanding, I want more learning. And yet what you're describing has a slightly different energy. It's leaning into enoughness, completeness, and appreciation of what I do have.
Yeah.
when my needs, which I can identify, are met.
Yeah. And she describes, I love her description of contentment as it's a low arousal positive emotion. So that's a bit of jargon, but it's basically, she describes it as a comfy old pair of jeans emotion. So it's that peace, tranquility, satisfaction, not excitement and surprise and joy, which are great emotions, great positive emotions, and are high arousal. This is about a
Nice.
low arousal. It's that peace, it's the contentment, it's the tranquility, it's just that sort of slowing down and stopping and being grateful and appreciative of what we do have and what needs are met.
Nice.
Yeah. So I think it's an interesting thing to think about. She talks about how researchers ask the question, all things considered, how satisfied are you with your life as a whole these days? And when I think about that question, I think we don't often ask ourselves that question very much. We instead just get caught up in chasing after bigger and better and more, rather than stopping and going, hang on, what does my life look like? What do I have? What needs are met?
So how satisfied are you as a whole with your life these days, Grace?
I think pretty much exactly what I was saying is that on the day-to-day, I'm probably quite caught up in getting more and achieving more and feeling like I don't have enough. But then when I actually stop and take a big look at my life as a whole, I can experience contentment and enough when I think about all the little things that make up my life. If that was all it was, that would be enough.
I like
Yeah.
it. And I hear what you're saying, because there's the space or the pause. It's like the step back and into that sentence, my life as a whole. Because of course in the day you're like, oh, I've seen this, I'd like to buy it, or I need to get this assignment in, or I wish I had more time, or I wish I'd caught up with this person, or I wish I'd got this done, or there's more to do. But the reflection piece is sort of like a stepping back and sitting down. Personally, I used to confuse contentment for inaction, and I used to confuse peace with doing nothing, wanting nothing, being a bit blah. And now I recognize that I can have contentment running like a little river underneath a whole lot of action, but it changes somehow the energy of that action, like it's slightly less desperate or clinging or clawing or frenetic. And so it's actually fine to want or seek things or to work hard or to be active. But if you can find what Brené Brown is calling a comfy pair of jeans, which I'm going to call a lovely slouchy dress,
Yeah.
like just you put that dress on, you're dressed for the day. Like that, you are done. Like you are sorted. Like that's appreciation enough. This is enough. This one piece of clothing.
Yeah.
Hey, that's really lovely. Thanks for digging into contentment with me. Thanks, Brené Brown, too. Awesome.
Yeah.
Ka kite anō. Thanks, Grace.
Thank you.
It's the Sacred Text on Sunday Sanctuary with Petra Bagust.
Strahan Coleman, thank you for being a friend of Sunday Sanctuary. We appreciate you truly.
Thank you.
I'm going to read us a poem now, and it's a short poem by William Martin. And this kōrero is about the miracle of the mundane. And it's partly called the miracle of the mundane because we love alliteration. So I'm interested to hear your take on that. And let's use this poem as our bouncing board. Do not ask your children to strive for extraordinary lives. Such striving may seem admirable, but it is the way of foolishness. Help them instead to find the wonder and marvel of an ordinary life. Show them the joy of tasting tomatoes, apples, and pears. Show them how to cry when pets and people die. Show them the infinite pleasure in the touch of a hand. And make the ordinary come alive for them. The extraordinary will take care of itself. Ancient Advice for Modern Parents, The Parents' Tao Te Ching by William Martin. So, as you hear that, what do you glean or take or receive?
I mean, it's an absolutely spectacular language for life, isn't it? I mean, funnily enough, I mean, I've been trying to practice this in my life for so many years, and I read this poem, and the first thing I feel is just inspiration and excitement, almost like relief, you know? I mean, I think I grew up certainly being told that life was that, you know, we got to take life by the bullhorns and really kind of have an ambition and visualize it. And it was the 90s and it was all sort of positive thinking and all of that's wonderful. But I think that sort of way of seeing the world fixates you so much on an end goal that you have no idea what tomatoes taste like or how to really weep in the moment. And so I love the inspiration and the challenge of this poem. I think even after all of these years in my own journey, which has been one of, you know, I've been unwell for so long, you know, maybe 10 years or something. And I've had to learn this to survive. You know, it's almost been like a survival thing. But still, when I read this poem, it just captured my imagination again for diving deeper and deeper into the ordinary life. I think it's beautiful, profound.
Isn't that in itself quite an incredible response, that rather than this being an admonishment to stop worrying about the future or to put big things down, it's a take a deep dive into the life that you have, taste tomatoes and pears, you know, feel the crunch of an apple, like the crunch of a really good apple. Wow.
Yeah, I have a down here. I have a mentor. He's 85. He's an old Anglican bishop, actually. Just quirky, hilarious, like he's still out there playing golf every week and going fishing on his own, and you know, just super active, lovely guy. But I live in a small town in the Coromandel called Tairua, and I'm often driving around or walking around, and I'll see him. He walks every day. I see him and his wife. They walk every day all the way across the beach, up the mountain. And he just stops. He stops every 20, 30 meters. I watch him. He'll stop and he just looks up. He'll notice a bird. He'll notice a flower and he'll stand there, you know, and I'll kind of like pull over and watch him, and he'll stand there for 10 minutes just looking dead still at a bird. And he is so captured by what he's seeing. It's so profound for him. And then when we talk, I'll notice, you know, we'll catch up for tea and he'll say, you know, I noticed this bird the other day that I haven't seen in 3 months. And he'll just go on this big thing. And I've always admired his ability to be absolutely landed in the moment, to notice ordinary things that I just drive by every day and to sink into them as if there's some kind of invitation into enchantment. And he's able to do that after all of those years. He's never switched off. Birds must be the most common thing for him. You know, he's been around a lot longer than I have. And it seems opposite. He seems more of a child, more in awe than ever before. And he's been an amazing example to my life. I would love to be like that. And I see that sort of calling in this poem.
Yeah, and even that act of noticing a bird, like, and your use of the word awe, do we kind of not quite realize that awe and wonder is perhaps a core human need? That we need to be surprised and delighted, but to fulfill that core human need for wonder, we don't have to get something bigger, more expensive, faster, stronger, greater. That wonder is perhaps in the looking and the seeing, rather than it's from in coming out, rather than having to be provided by the next thing we buy or next mountain we climb.
Yeah. It's a discipline. Yeah.
Which makes it sound serious.
It does make it sound serious. You know, I had probably about 6 years ago now, I was very, very unwell, and I had been unwell for years. Doctors couldn't figure out what was going on, and I was waking up every morning feeling terrible. So what I would do, instead of just waking up and being stuck in bed for 10 hours or whatever and just feeling miserable, I'd pick myself up, I'd go force myself down to a cafe, and there was a cafe locally where I lived that had a beautiful window seat, and I'd sit there with a coffee and I'd just write. And on one of these days I was looking out and my writing was miserable. It was, I feel sick, I feel hopeless, what's going on, I've lost my music career, I'm losing my friends, and it was all disastrous. And I looked up, and just out the window, I noticed, it was just a street, like a busy street, that the sun was striking right across all the windows as it rose, and it was just bouncing off the cars, and it was just a suburban slosh, really. But for some reason, to me, it felt really beautiful. And I had this moment of thinking, you know what? And I just started writing. I was like, I'm thankful for my fingers. I'm thankful. I just started thinking about all the things that I had. I'm thankful for my toes. I'm thankful for my eyebrows. I think I'm thankful that I have hair on my head, that my ears function. And I found myself in this process of beginning to name all of the wonder and all of the truly beautiful gifts I had in detail. This joy started to bubble up in me. And I found myself just praying this prayer, thank you for the life that I have. If this is it, if I'm sick for the rest of my days, I thank you for the life that I've had. And honestly, it felt like a concrete stadium just lifted from my shoulders, and I felt full of joy. And it was a real revelation to me, because those are all things I take for granted that not everybody has. And it's easy to forget that in the world that we live in. They're not things I can buy, well, generally speaking. They're not things that I have much control over. And from that day on, I just made a discipline every morning of finding 10 things to be thankful for. Thank you for my bed, for my clothes, I think the sunrise, and it actually it profoundly shifted my life. I went from looking at what I didn't have. I didn't have the ability to earn, to do my career, to sing, to do all these things I loved. And yet what I was discovering was I had a million other things that I'd taken for granted that were forming a beautiful life. And it changed for me. And when I think of this poem, it helped me to see tomatoes. It helped me to taste apples and pears. It helped me to feel tears again, because suddenly life became vibrant. It was like Technicolor explosion where it had just been so grey. And yet I would honestly say it was probably a discipline. It didn't come I'm a naturally morose personality type, so it took a lot of work, but it's been a gift to me. Yeah.
I hear it. I hear that it's been a gift to you. Did you write it down, or did you say it out loud? How did you express it in the world?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I wrote it down. I think that's how I processed so many of my thoughts, by writing. I think I was writing. I think I was journaling, yeah.
And it's pretty accessible, isn't it? Thank you for the leaf that I am touching in front of my computer. Thank you for the feel. Thank you for the smell of a candle that I've lit, or thank you for this lovely sweatshirt that is keeping me warm. Yeah. It is, I think, like you say, it's like creating a groove that is good and leads you somewhere whole, like it leads you towards wonder or joy or peace. And I love your picture of a concrete stadium lifting. So can I ask about your health at the moment? Where are you in your wellness and unwellness journey?
Oh, it's not good, Petra. It's not good. I am in a particularly overwhelming patch. And I have to say, I actually, before we spoke, I picked up this poem and I just wept reading it again, just from the sense of myself being like, I'm in a moment I have to rediscover this so deeply, because, I think for me it comes in waves. I started this full-on diet like 9 months ago, and it was meant to be massively transformative. 6 weeks ago, I basically cut out all the extra food that I had already hadn't cut out yet, taking massive amounts of supplements, huge restriction, massive amounts of things. And I'm worse now than I was 2 months ago. And so it comes in waves like that. And when it's good, it's great. I feel on top of the world. Life's going to be okay. And when it's bad, I think I have to wake up and be able to see the sunrise again, and force myself to remember that life is full of treats and treasures, but they live under the surface, I think, of this world that we've made for ourselves. And you got to go searching, you got to go hunting. So long answer, but yeah, it's not great.
And it's an important answer though, because a health journey or a life journey is not a destination. Obviously you desire to be well, and yet for you that's not the journey at the moment. It's this wending. And I think for so many people who have a health burden or an emotional burden or a trauma burden or a mental health burden, it's not a trajectory up and out and see you later and we're A-okay now. It's this wending our way. And so how do we find a miracle within the mundane, or how do we find a moment within the madness, or a moment within the pain, you know?
Yeah, and I guess for some people, they wrestle with the mundane is that they're bored, you know? They don't like their job anymore. They finally got the money they wanted and it's not satisfying them. And I mean, there's a million reasons to suddenly wake up one day and go, this is boring, you know? I mean, I think in some ways, many of us, we wake up, maybe we've got a few kids and we're 15 years into our career and we go, whoa, hang on a second, like I am not satisfied. But for others, it's that they haven't managed to sort through their trauma after 20 years, that their body is still broken, their body is still telling them they can't. For others, it's their loved one is just they haven't resurrected. You know, they're not back. Might be a marriage or the loss of a child. And I mean, that's a different kind of a mundane. That kind of mundane is a grief. And we have grief about so many things. It took me a long time to realize that I was grieving the loss of my life, you know, the loss of the life that I could live if I was well enough. And that grief is a kind of mundaneness, because you wake up and you go, oh, this again? Like, do I have to work through this again? And it can be overwhelming and it can be really hard on the mind and and people around us, you know. And I think the miracle of the mundane for me, it isn't denying grief. I'm not one of those people. I mean, I couldn't deny it if I wanted to. Like I said, I'm a rose. It's been enough years, you know, I can't do that. But I think what this poem invites me to, what the miracle of the ordinary invites me to, is actually just a slight focus shift, is to say, yes, again, I have this thing I'm carrying. I feel it. I'm not going to deny it. But what I am going to do is I'm going to add to that this embrace of the beauty of life as it is. And that's actually really, really brave. That's really brave to do. I mean, if you're out there listening and you're struggling with depression or anxiety, you know what I mean. It's a very brave thing to say, actually, it's not all bad. Actually, it's not all grief and hopelessness. There is wonder. And it is it is a liberation. And I think for some that's work and whatever, but for others that's grief, and that's okay too.
Yeah. And the idea that we could, I guess, take a hold of a freedom inside of a difficulty, like take a hold of the freedom of some beauty inside of all of the pain, is a yes and move. It doesn't deny or, you know, or negate the boredom or the difficulty or whatever it is that is hard, but it adds to it a different texture, a different sense. You know, it adds beauty, it adds wonder, it adds awe to that, and that is, I think, something that we all need. I think it's a valid human need. Very cool.
It is. I listened to something, I saw something on social media the day it came up, and it was an actor talking about spirituality, and he said, we are not human beings having a spiritual experience, we're spiritual beings having a human experience. And for me, that's actually not true. And I think a struggle I have with that is that it doesn't embrace humanness, you know, and that being a human, it can't embrace suffering and struggle. Do you know what I mean? And I think we have to find a way. I love what you're saying, the sense of bringing this in. It's almost a sense of everything belongs. Everything in our human experience actually belongs within us. And in my tradition, in the Christian tradition, the whole idea is that suffering and death gets engulfed into beauty and goodness and is given back as something wonderful, but it's not denied. You know, suffering isn't denied and trials aren't denied. They're almost the fuel for which transformation is found. And I think for me in my life, that kind of spirituality, that kind of outlook on life where I say, all of my humanness is all part of this transcendence too. And if I can envelop that and welcome that rather than denying it, it may actually, you know, it's like compost. It may become all the junk that ends up turning into compost and giving birth to something magnificent. And I think, you know, if anyone out there is listening and that you're in a situation, anything like mine or your own, which is worse, I think for me that, you know, we have to bring it into our heart, allow it to bring beauty and wonder by being thankful and finding, you know, miracle in the mundane and letting it become the compost of some other beauty within us that we can't see yet. And that, to me, that's what this poem is, whether it's tasting tomatoes, apples, and pears, playing with your children, or engulfing what is difficult as a form of protest and liberation. That's the miracle in the mundane.
That is amazing. Your book, Beholding, is out. Where else can people hear you? If they want to dig into more of what you're saying, how can people join your community or hear you online?
Well, I kind of write under the moniker Commoners Communion, but I've written some prayer books that are actually really about this whole journey of bringing stuff in and focusing and enlivening. So if you just search my name, Strahan Coleman, prayer books or something, you'll find those, and you'll find me out there somewhere.
That's awesome too. I love those prayer books.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for our kōrero today. Bless you.
Thanks, Petra.
In your beauty and your pain.
Yeah, thank you.
Shout out to Strahan Coleman's latest publication, Belonging. Get it at any good book store. I love everything he's published so far. I have a benediction, which is essentially a blessing to send you on your way. So this is your blessing for the miracle of the mundane. Bless the daily grind, the snake of red lights we follow to work and home again. Bless this ordinary day, the day of grey and wind, the day of sun and shine. Bless this waking feeling of here we go again. And then we do, literally, go again. Teeth, toilet, dressed. Bless us when we decide what to eat every day, multiple times. Bless the repeats, the old favourite and the old faithfuls. And the repaired, the hand-me-downs, the pilled and rubbed. We are repaired in the repeats. We are handed down from our loved ones to our loved ones. We are pilled and rubbed by this mundane life, and slowly it smooths us, heals us, helps us to become more whole when we let it. Bless the healing that happens over time in our ordinary mundane lives, lives that belong to us, and where we find the miracle of living. So bless you as you go today and tomorrow. Thanks for being with us for Sunday Sanctuary, and honestly for your contribution, for your presence, for your feedback. It is gratefully received. You are amazing. Thanks for being a little bit of a miracle yourself. We'll see you for another Sunday Sanctuary, a Mother's Day special coming out soon. Until then, blessings.